Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. Let read together. Have fun. When Lu Zhou brought Yu Qinshu here, he had sensed Yu Zhenghai and Yu Shangrong through the marks he left on them. Both of them did not remove the marks. Both of them had also confirmed Yu Qinshu was not in the Sky Martial Court. However, both of them were still somewhere in the Guanyi circuit and had not returned. Meanwhile, upon hearing Lu Zhou's words, Yu Qinshu realized he was left with no choice. Just as Lu Zhou had said, even if he did not talk, Lu Zhou would still be able to find answers through other means. The puppet is dead, so I have nothing left to live for. Yu Qinshu sat cross-legged and placed his hands on his Dantian Sea of Qi. He used whatever little primal qi he managed to gather with great difficulty to stay in the air. I don't need your sympathy. Lu Zhou sneered. You think too highly of yourself. If it weren't for the sake of the Thousand Realms whirling cultivator, I would have slapped you to death a long time ago. Do you think I'd allow you to continue barking like that? Lu Zhou withdrew primal qi completely from Yu Qinshu. Yu Qinshu swayed, barely able to maintain his flight in the air. He looked at the moon and the sea of fire in the Sky Will Rift Valley as he said, I'm the courtmaster of the Sky Martial Court. This will never change. Then, Yu Qinshu began to pat the dust off his robes with his bare hands and tidied himself as much as he could. Unfortunately, the blood that stained his skin was difficult to get rid of. Following that, he lifted his hand and smoothed his unkempt hair. Finally, he inhaled deeply. After a moment, perhaps, Yu Qinshu was still dissatisfied with his current appearance, so he looked up at Lu Zhou and asked, Can you give me a piece of clothing? Lu Zhou ignored Yu Qinshu. How could Yu Qinshu care about these things at this time? Yu Qinshu sighed and flew toward the back of the mountain range before he landed among the rubble and debris. He pulled out a long robe from somewhere and found a bottle of water. Then, he proceeded to wipe himself clean with the water before he put on the long robes. Naturally, Lu Zhou was not afraid Yu Qinshu would escape. Yu Qinshu no longer had the puppet and was seriously injured. Moreover, he could transform unnamed into a bow and arrows. Nonetheless, Lu Zhou found it strange. What was Yu Qinshu trying to do? After a while, when Yu Qinshu was done, he flew weakly into the air and returned to his original position. Lu Zhou glanced at Yu Qinshu and shook his head. Is this so important? It's more important than life and death, Yu Qinshu replied. There's a saying that humans are no different from animals who fight among themselves. Lu Zhou suddenly said. Humans are vulgar creatures to begin with, Yu Qinshu replied. Lu Zhou asked threateningly, Do you really think I won't kill you? It's human instinct to fight to stay alive. However, what happens when we return? Yu Qinshu could not accept his failure. As the master of the puppet that he was so proud of and a 10-leaf karmic fire user, he could not tolerate failure. Lu Zhou remained silent. Yu Qinshu continued to say, There are more than 100 cultivators imprisoned under the Sky Martial Court's literary Stargate. They're mostly members of the Sky Research Court. The Sky Martial Court only came this far because of their undeniable efforts, but... He paused briefly and sighed as he shook his head before he continued, There are no two people who are similar in the universe. Even if all of them loved seeking truths, exploring the unknown, and shared the same interest, it's impossible to make all of them listen to me. Humans can be kind, but they can also be evil. Some are kinder than others, and some are eviler. However, most people hover somewhere in the middle. These people, they were destined for great things. I have no choice but to imprison them. After Yu Qinshu finished speaking, he began to cough again. Lu Zhou shook his head and said, Jiang Wenqiu of the Flying Star House stayed in the Golden Lotus domain for more than 300 years. He was even more extreme and nastier than you. In the end, he still could not stop the tide of times. Do you still think you did the right thing? Yu Qinshu said loudly, He's not worthy to be mentioned in the same breath as me. I just think people should be more obedient. It was never my intention to hinder the progress of mankind. In my eyes, both of you are no different, Lu Zhou said tonelessly. Yu Qinshu felt stifled by Lu Zhou's words. He said, everyone wants to be stronger and stand at the top. There's nothing wrong with what I did since I possessed the capability. All right. Zhou rested his hands on his back and shook his head expressionlessly. Save your words for other people. Wait. Yu Chenshu raised his hand. His expression was unnatural as he said, I have only one request, don't let those people out. Then, he inhaled deeply before he regarded Zhou with a complex gaze and said before closing eyes, you can do it now. There was no change in Zhou's expression. He did not even look at Yu Chenshu as he paced in the air and said, after I see Luo Xian and Si Kong Beichen, I will send you to your death. Unfortunately, I can't return. As soon as Yu Chenshu finished speaking, he suddenly turned around and pushed his hand out toward Zhou with all the primal chi he had left. Zhou frowned and turned around to launch a palm strike. Are you seeking death? The golden abandoned wisdom shot toward Yu Chenshu. At this moment, Yu Chenshu swiftly withdrew his hands to the sides, allowing the palm seal to strike his chest. Bang! Yu Chenshu was sent flying back. A muffled groan rang in the air before he spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. Despite that, a faint smile could be seen on his face as he said, thank you. As expected, the impact from abandoned wisdom pushed Yu Chenshu into the sea of fire in the Sky-Will Rift Valley. After a moment, Zhou received a notification. Ding! Killed a target. Obtained 6,000 merit points. Obtained domain bonus 1,500 merit points. Zhou shook his head and sighed. How foolish. Most people think the common folks were stupid. However, the rules and order of the universe were established because of them. There was wisdom behind their stupidity. For example, a beggar on the streets disregarded his dignity and pride to survive. However, Yu Chenshu could not even endure a moment of failure and chose to die instead. He was much worse than a beggar. Following that, Zhou turned around to leave. As he was flying away, he received a notification. Ding! Found the flood-grade weapon, the confinement seal. Do you want to retrieve it? Retrieve it. Zhou raised his hand and the confinement seal flew up into his palm. It was like a steel paperweight now. At a glance, the confinement seal's current appearance somewhat resembled the square box. However, it was very clear that the confinement seal was much more powerful than the square box. Its abilities were better as well. Obtained the confinement seal. Grade, flood grade. Owner, Yu Chenshu. Requires refining before it can be used again. At this moment, Zhou recalled the life-siphoning technique and the flag. He quickly flew to the place he had last seen it only to discover it had been long reduced to ashes. He did not think it was a pity that the flag was destroyed. In fact, he thought the thing was disgusting. After that, he flew to the place where the black dragon spear had fallen. Ding! Found the black dragon spear. Weapon is damaged and cannot be repaired. Do you want to retrieve it? What a pity that it could not be repaired. Nevertheless, he still chose to retrieve it. After all, it might be able to be used to repair the longevity sword. Zhou looked at the spear and confirmed it was completely damaged. However, he found a fire spirit stone. Ding! Obtained fire spirit stone X1. This was not a bad gain. Zhou flew around mountains filled with corpses. Who knew if he might find some better weapons? Unfortunately, most of the weapons were earth-grade weapons or not even worth mentioning. Subsequently, Zhou made his way back to Cloud Mountain. In a hall on the third peak of Cloud Mountain. Before dawn, Zhou opened the system and checked his merit points, item cards, and weapons. Merit points, 517,390. Items, Deadly Strike card X1, Impeccable card X1, Critical Block card X58, Passive, Disguise card X1, Golden Taishu Mirror, Appearance Alteration card X3, Shining Stone X1, Refining Talisman X1, Reversal card X57, Fire Spirit Stone X1. Weapon, unnamed, unknown, Jade Horsetail Whisk, Heaven Grade, Magistrate Brush, Super Heaven Grade, 9-string Zither, unknown, Square Box, Basic Desolate Grade, Purple Glazed Ceramic, Intermediate Desolate Grade, Cold Wind Trident, Basic Desolate Grade, Confinement Seal, Intermediate Flood Grade, Dragon Eagle's Fury, Intermediate Desolate Grade, Flash Hook, Intermediate Desolate Grade. When Zhou saw he had more than 500,000 merit points, his first thought was he finally had enough money to buy the 1,000 Realms Whirling Avatar. He was already sick of using the 100 Tribulations Insight Avatar, especially after he had seen the Astrolabe and Luli's 1,000 Realms Whirling Avatar with his own eyes. There was no doubt it gave it an air of mystery and made people yearn for it. How could he not yearn for it? If the Black 1,000 Realms Whirling Avatar was already so stunning, how stunning would his Golden 1,000 Realms Whirling Avatar be? Zhou opened the system panel. Purchase the 1,000 Realms Whirling Avatar. Ding. You've used 500,000 merit points to obtain the 1,000 Realms Whirling Avatar. Ding. The 1,000 Realms Whirling Avatar requires the activation of the first birth chart. Previously, Luli had told Zhou that he needed to activate the birth chart before he could manifest the 1,000 Realms Whirling Avatar. However, he did not expect that to really be the case. Birth Palace? Zhou placed the piece of cloth Luli gave him in front of him. The 36 triangles were arranged in a clockwise order. They formed a pattern that looked like a blooming flower. Right in the middle of the pattern were the words Birth Palace. On the other hand, the points of the 36 triangles were called birth discs. Zhou frowned slightly. He did not have any experience at all in this area. It was akin to him flying blindly like a headless fly. He knew there was no rushing this matter. Zhou no longer dwelled on that matter. In fact, when he saw he still had 17,390 merit points, he was in a rather good mood. At least, he had already obtained the 1,000 Realms Whirling Avatar. He would not need to go through obstacles and cultivate like other cultivators. Subsequently, he looked at his weapons. He had gained a lot this time. His biggest gain was undoubtedly Yuchanshu's Floodgrade Confinement Seal. He had experienced the power of this weapon during his fight with Yuchanshu. How much more powerful would it be if he wielded it himself? With that thought in mind, he brought out his last refining talisman and tossed the confinement seal into the flames. As for the other weapons, it would depend on who needed them in the future. If there were no use for them, he would find a blacksmith to take weapons apart to be used as materials before giving them to his disciples. Then, he looked at his favorite weapon, Unnamed. He was very satisfied that Unnamed's strength clearly surpassed that of a flood-grade weapon. I really wonder what grade Unnamed belongs to. When he recalled how he had obtained Unnamed in the very beginning, he felt extremely lucky. All the good things were given to him. However, the system had become very stingy now. Even after drawing the lucky draw for half a day, at most, he had obtained a reversal card. After he looked through the things he obtained today, he closed the system panel. Then, he began to meditate on the heavenly writing using the purple glazed ceramic. The sun rose in the east. In the Guanyi Circuit's Sky Marshal Court. Elder Chiu, I can't endure it anymore. That two little thieves are really bullying us too much. Not only that, but they're causing trouble in our Sky Marshal Court. I suggest we use the formation to take them down. I agree. I don't know where those two thieves came from, but they dare to provoke the Sky Marshal Court. If we don't get rid of them, the pride of the Sky Marshal Court would be trampled on. Don't be anxious. We'll wait for the courtmaster to return before we make any plans. Those two have extraordinary cultivation bases and are extremely cunning. They're definitely not ordinary nine-leaf cultivators. Everyone was still engaged in a heated discussion when a court disciple broke into the hall and collapsed on the ground immediately. Sweat was dripping down his face, his eyes were widened, and his entire body was shaking. He stammered, "This. No, this is bad. Court M Master, Elder Mo. Elder Jian. Their life stones have shattered." Silence descended immediately in the hall. The atmosphere was tense. It felt as though they had been splashed with a bucket of ice water, they were trembling all over. In one of the relay stations in the capital. It was incredibly lively today. The cultivators were busy exchanging information and knowledge with each other. I heard something big happened in the Skywell mountain range yesterday. The entire valley turned into a sea of fire. Many people were killed and injured. It seems like the true Kunlun sect and the Void sect fought with the Sky Martial Court. Later, I heard a Golden Lotus cultivator single-handedly fought against 10,000 people. The fight was so intense that the ground quaked and the sky turned dark. Those who were watching from afar said they couldn't see anything due to the terrible visibility. They didn't know who won or lost. A Golden Lotus cultivator? This foreign tribesman is really bold, he dares to behave so audaciously in our Red Lotus domain. The courtmaster would definitely crush him. Upon hearing these words, a man sitting in the middle said with a sigh, "I'm afraid that the courtmaster is doomed." Everyone turned to look at the man in unison. What do you mean? I heard that the Golden Lotus cultivator likes killing elites. Up until now, he has never failed. You're lying. My friend was there, watching from afar. Guess what he saw? What? He saw a Black Lotus avatar appearing out of nowhere, and it crushed the Golden Lotus cultivator to death using its hand. We're really unlucky. Who knows if we'll live to see the sunrise tomorrow now that a Black Lotus cultivator has appeared. Someone clicked their tongue before saying, your lie is even more exaggerated than his. Regardless of what everyone's opinions were, they did not doubt that the Skywell mountain range had collapsed. Soon enough, the deaths of Yu Chenshu, Mo Bian, Jiantingzhong were also confirmed. With this, the people in Great Tang's cultivation universe began to panic. Meanwhile, on Cloud Mountain. When Lu Zhou opened his eyes, he had already replenished 1/3 of his extraordinary power. He was also feeling much better mentally. Following that, he ordered someone to invite Nie Qingyun over. When Nie Qingyun heard that Lu Zhou had invited him over, he rushed over immediately. As soon as he entered the room, he hurriedly asked, Senior Lu, did you go to the Skywell mountain range? Lu Zhou did not deny it. He nodded and asked, you've heard the news? Only a night and half a day had passed, but the news spread so quickly? Yes. News of this is spreading like a wildfire. Moreover, it's said that a Black Lotus cultivator has appeared, and disaster is imminent. I thought. Nie Qingyun suddenly stopped speaking. An embarrassed expression appeared on his face. Lu Zhou was too busy to explain himself to Nie Qingyun. In any case, Nie Qingyun would learn the truth sooner or later. Therefore, he asked, does Cloud Mountain have any books about activating birth charts? This. An awkward expression appeared on Nie Qingyun's face. I think we might have them, but the chances are low. His Majesty seems very knowledgeable about this. Perhaps, you can speak to him about this, Senior Lu. Li Yunzheng was well-read. He spent most of the time in the palace reading. The library in the Imperial Palace was naturally superior to the libraries available to ordinary people. Lu Zhou nodded and said, invite him over. All right. Nie Qingyun left the third peak and returned to the main peak to bring Li Yunzheng to Lu Zhou's courtyard. Li Yunzheng was confused at the sudden invitation. However, he still greeted Lu Zhou politely when he saw Lu Zhou. Grandmaster. Sit. Lu Zhou pointed to the spot across from him. Li Yunzheng obediently sat down. After Lu Zhou glanced at Nie Qingyun tactfully left them alone. After Nie Qingyun left, Lu Zhou stroked his beard and asked, you said you read a lot. Do you know much about birth charts? I've read many books about birth charts. However, since I'm not a cultivator, I don't really understand them completely. If it's possible, I'd like to seize this opportunity to discuss this with you, Grandmaster, Li Yunzheng said. Very well. Go ahead. In the ancient books, it said the way to activate a birth chart is to put the life heart of a birth chart beast into a specific position in one's lotus. At that time, the unique properties of the life heart would trigger the activation of a birth chart. The process would drain the vitality energy from the life heart. Apparently, once the vitality from the life heart has been completely absorbed, the birth chart would be activated. However, I'm curious as to how cultivators chose the positions. I'm even more curious, Zhou said calmly. The star aligns the pen and sword, the hidden jade in the stone, moonlight shines on the calm sea. Every birth disc has a name. Li Yunzheng was delighted when he heard Zhou's words. He exclaimed, Grandmaster, you're really knowledgeable. I have read about the star aligns the pen and sword, but I've never come across the last two. What do they mean, Grandmaster? Zhou stroked his beard and said with a straight face, when you start cultivating, your master will tell you all about it. Let me ask you, how many birth charts can a person activate? Li Yunzheng replied with a confused expression, I'm confused about this as well. Different books say different things. Some said a cultivator could activate up to 6 birth charts while some said a cultivator could activate up to 8 birth charts. There are even books that said one could activate 12 birth charts. How can the numbers be so different? There's no need to be surprised. Ancient books aren't always accurate, Zhou said. You're right, Grandmaster. How interesting that there's a name for every position. Alas, the ancient books I read have very limited information. Tell me what you know. Li Yunjing nodded and began to talk non-stop. About 2 hours later, Zhou finally had a basic understanding of birth charts. Naturally, it was based on Li Yunjing's words. He would still need to determine for himself to see if the information was accurate. Based on what Li Yunjing said, it was clear there were no records of any cultivators activating 36 birth charts. However, he could confirm that the birth charts were neatly arranged in the birth palace, which is the center of the lotus. As for the birth disc, it would probably trigger a skill once one's birth chart had reached a certain number. The birth disc would also likely boost the strength of the astrolabe of one's 1,000 realms whirling avatar. After speaking for such a long time, Li Yunzheng was not tired at all. In fact, he was still very energetic and excited. He asked, Grandmaster, I heard you've already activated your birth chart. Can I? No. Zhou rejected Li Yunzheng ruthlessly before Li Yunzheng could even finish speaking. He shook his head and said, It's true you've read many books. However, you're not very focused. You haven't even started cultivating yet. If you try to understand things that are beyond your depth, it'll only deal a blow to your confidence. Oh. A disappointed expression appeared on Li Yunjing's face immediately.